can really easily just ban out the opposing strategy in the second phase.
Right, it's not always necessarily dependent on the player at that position, but just the meta that exists for it. So right now in the AD carry role, like you were saying, we see that there's 3 really top-tier utility-based AD carries, and you can easily take one of those, and if they don't respond in the early phase of the draft, you ban out the next 2. So you're going to want to keep your eye on. On the red side, we see pretty common bans coming in with LeBlanc and Rengar so far. Lastly is usually Camille. On the blue side, we see Misfortune, Ryze, and Zyra banning out a couple other power picks.
Yeah, and not to mention 2 of the power picks straight out of the support role as well in the Zyra and Misfortune. One kind of being the counterpart to the other one, but that also leaves open the Karma as one of those premier picks for support in the bottom lane. As you mentioned, the Camille needing to be banned out by eUnited.
Right, it's a little surprising to see the Zyra ban once you've already banned out the Misfortune. You usually do that to try and force the other team to have to ban the Zyra, but if they're targeting the Malzahar the whole time, banning out those 2 does give you the best matchup that you can probably get, unless they go for a Karma. On the other side, eUnited taking Varus and looking like Kha'Zix makes sense, given that he's one of the best junglers left up.
Yeah, one of the more powerful jungle picks as we've seen most recently, going to be locked in as well as one of those 3 utility AD carries. Normally, we see Varus, we see Jhin, we see Ashe. Wouldn't be surprised to wind up seeing an Ashe and potentially a jungle pickup here from the side of Tempo Storm.
Right, there's basically 2 strategies in this first phase of the draft. One is to match the picks in terms of role, so that way when you get into the second ban phase, you're not banning out and trying to pinch each other. The other option is to actually go unbalanced, and then you try and pinch the other pool harder. AD carry is very, very scary, and that's why you do see the Ashe, but we see a difference here where instead of going for a jungler, they go for one of the most powerful control mages left up in Syndra. Very bursty, very scary to play against.
Yeah, and of course, with the LeBlanc and the Ryze banned away, Syndra kind of being still one of those top-tier mid-lane picks. It's kind of been that way since Worlds last year, and it's continued into here, but we actually see a hover of the Echo. We've seen this matchup a little bit. The Echo can potentially be flexed into the top lane, but most of the time, going to wind up being a pick against some of those control mages. The Assassins more recently got reworked, and those are very powerful pickups to go against some of those more mid-lane control mages.
Especially the Syndra. A lot of Assassins have a defensive tool that kind of helps them out there, or have the aggression to just overwhelm her. So things like Fizz and Echo, 2 common assassin counters to Syndra, are able to disjoint themselves from her ultimate with their abilities, both the Fizz E and the Echo ultimate. And then just generally, they have the pressure to kill her with a little bit of gank assistance. So it's pretty common to see the mid lane pick up there. Hopefully they don't want their assassins getting banned out, because once you lose those assassins for Syndra, it can be very scary, so it makes sense to see them grab that.
Yeah, and now we're going into the second ban phase. It's going to start on the red side where eUnited has banned out Elise, and then on the flip side from Tempo Storm, they wind up banning out the Jace for themselves as well, and then the Rek'Sai ban coming in, really pinching, like you said, that jungle pool. Not a lot left open.
Right, so they're trying to go for the things that the other team doesn't have, with Kha'Zix being the top tier jungler left. Taking Elise Rek'Sai basically leaves up Lee Sin as probably what you're going to be looking at to be taken. And the final pick or ban coming in for Tempo Storm is the Lulu, a pretty common counter pick to their first pick, Malzahar, so it's good to see them banning that out as well. And, you know, like I was saying before, maybe the Karma is what they end up with.
Yeah, and by taking the Karma, they know they have to pick support, and they have still a solo lane left open. Might as well save that for the counter pick up here. And as you mentioned now, the jungle pool being pinched down to potentially Lee Sin. We were actually talking just before the broadcast about the Lee Sin and Kha'Zix kind of mechanics going back and forth, who winds up playing who. And in general, Kha'Zix kind of being like that top tier pick, and with the Elise, the Rek'Sai, and all the other targeted jungle bans, you're kind of left with that second tier if you want to go for it.
And that's definitely what I would put Vi under, which is what they ended up going with. It's a champion that is actually pretty strong right now. It really is just tier 2, just under a lot of those most common picks, and it does have a lot more guaranteed level 6 power spike than a lot of the other ones. Rengar is one that's comparable as well, where at level 6 you're going to force some action on the map, and Vi is a good alternative to that. In the top lane, though, we do see the Swain, the Quas Swain. He's world famous for this. Like, when Swain got reworked, Quas like spammed a million games on him because he was a huge Swain player before then. He got Challenger in NA with 200 ping from Venezuela playing only Swain. It was quite the story, so you guys are in for a treat.
Yeah, back in his New World Eclipse days when he was still, well, last time he was in the Challenger Series, actually.
Right.
Coming full circle at that one. So while we were going very, very detailed on what the kind of picks were, we actually wind up seeing a couple of interesting things. The Quas Swain there, but also the last pick here for eUnited being the Kennen, which seen a little bit more popularity, but not the same kind of Kennen that we saw at Worlds.
Yeah, it's a lot less bursty. There were nerfs to a couple items that the Kennen generally likes to get, things like the Rylai's and the Proto Belt, another one.
Proto Belt, yeah.
It's been weakened a little bit, but it's still a strong pick. It hasn't made its way into the NA LCS yet, but we've seen it in Korea, though some of them are going for a little crazier build. Marin taking the attack speed one. We'll have to see how he decides to build the Kennen here. But overall, both teams have relatively squishy team comps with double mages on the top side.
And it's also going to be really interesting to kind of look at how eUnited is going to be playing this, because you wind up having on the side, there's a lot of kind of like area denial and a lot of like preventing people from kind of diving in. And there's not necessarily a lot of very, very long range aside from the Varus. So it looks like they're going to be really going for a lot of pick potential coming out from the side of eUnited. They have the Kha'Zix, so if somebody's out of position, he's going to try blowing them up. Whereas Tempo Storm, they kind of have the ability to make things happen a little bit earlier on with some hard CC coming out of almost every lane.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the kind of thing where Tempo Storm looks to be running more of a pick-off comp, and eUnited, I mean, they're also very, very explosive in terms of their damage dealers, but they have the option of 1-3-1 with the Echo mid. That's often one of the things that also works well against the Syndra is that once you get out of 6 and the first turret drops, she has a hard time matching a lot of those assassin mid laners that I was talking about in the side lane. So it's usually an okay matchup. You can snowball on it, and then worst case scenario, you try and go even and then split push it down.
We've been casting a lot of the University League of Legends series together, and I know you're a huge fan of the 1-3-1 strategy. So.
I mean, once you get into the mid and late game portions, you only have a couple basic lane steps that you can do, though you have to make sure you match up correctly against your opponent, even though you might go 1-3-1, where you put those two solo laners in the side lanes is very important. And you know, making sure that you're doing that correctly is a big deal because otherwise you just end up without enough pressure to get done what you need to do.
They also double teleports on the side of eUnited as well. So in that late game, when you have that kind of setup, there's a lot of potential map play that you can make. Whereas on the flip side with Syndra, using that Ghost as a maneuverability spell for roaming and also just be able to set things up in team fights, not going to have the same kind of explosive presence. Then again, you're not looking at the same kind of explosive split push from her.
Right. I like seeing the early bot lane aggression. Who needs to wait for creeps? They want to start shooting stuff at each other right now.
I mean, sometimes you just get a little itchy trigger finger. You just kind of have to get going. But we'll have to see what kind of adaptations are made or what kind of moves are actually made in the early game. We did kind of see Gilius just trying to edge as close to the enemy blue buff as possible to see where they're going to start. But aside from a couple of trades and skill shots in the bottom lane, it looks like everybody's just starting off pretty simple.
Yep, basic topside starts for both junglers. It's nice for Vi to be able to start on the blue buff. She definitely benefits from having that mana regen and cooldown. So overall, very happy start for her. I'm going to be really interested to see what she can do. Kha'Zix is kind of a monster throughout the entire game. Always has good dueling power, can clear pretty well, decent ganks. And Vi, on the other hand, her ganks are fine 3-6, but she really unlocks once she gets her ultimate.
Yeah, we already see a lot of aggression coming out from that Echo pick, and Fox in the mid lane just going really hard on that hat tricks as soon as he hits level 2.
It's a pretty good strategy to do because you have that teleport. You want to use it relatively early in your laning phase, trade really, really aggressively, get the Syndra low. Once you have enough farm, you go back, pick up a Doran's Ring, sometimes the Dark Seal, things like that. And you just try and use that TP advantage to keep her pinned in lane while you get a nice reset off.
He did wind up starting with the Corrupting Potion as well, so he's going to be able to sustain himself up, trade a little bit of extra damage, and if he so chooses to use that teleport, just kind of come back to lane for free with all those extra potions in his inventory. We'll have to keep an eye on where Fox and Gilius are actually going to be moving on this map too. One thing we didn't touch upon all too much is that these guys were both teammates on Schalke 04, and so they already have a little bit of established mid and jungle synergy. We'll have to see if Sentinel and Hatrix, who up until now have not played on the same team together, if they can kind of keep up with that pace they may set.
Right, it's definitely something you have to be concerned about, just the fact that anytime that you're in the challenger scene, a lot of these teams are relatively new. Anyone who can bring in some kind of existing synergy is very useful because you can kind of set up a game plan already. Oh, we got the mid lane counter pick that's a assassin. Let's snowball on the Syndra a little bit, and then there you go. You have something that you're setting out to do from the very beginning.
You got 2 assassins too, because Kha'Zix is no slouch when it comes to damage either.
No.
But we had Fox already, as we said, gone back, picked up the Dark Seal and the Control Ward for himself, and has used that teleport to get himself back to lane. So while we've already established what has really kind of happened in the middle side, I'm still really interested in the Swain versus Kennen matchup because A, I have no idea how this is going to go, and B, it's Quas on Swain.
I mean, that's two things. Those are 2 great points. 1, this is not a matchup we see very often.
Not very.
2, even if it was, Quas is on another level. He probably understands the matchup better than anyone. His trading, his mechanics have always been top tier. There was a time back right after we got Piglet and he was on the team, he was just spamming Swain and hard carrying, getting pentakills against teams in scrims. It was almost a joke how good his Swain was. So I'm hoping we get to see a similar performance here. He has the wave in a really, really nice spot. Gilius is coming up here to give some support to his top laner so that he can push that wave in safely, because this is one of the things Quas loves to do, freeze on his side with the wave and just keep you extended in his lane.
Well, when Quas came back to the NALCS and was playing for Energy in the top lane, there were a lot of questions about what kind of level his play was kind of at. He was basically coming in almost brand new to a completely different meta from when he stepped away from the game originally. But now he's in his element. He's playing these picks that you don't see absolutely all the time. He's got the wave management down packed to the point where the range matchup Kennen is pushing in on him, and we'll have to see if he's able to set himself up for success as one of the most experienced players on this Tempo Storm roster.
Yep, and we see that there's the first recall coming in for Vi, getting her tracking jungle upgrade. Yeah, so she can hopefully start warding up. I think she wants to play defensively, like I said, for the first 6 levels, just farm out, get that 6 before you start trying to force plays. And it's actually pretty hard lanes to force on. Kennen usually has good escapes, Echo has good ones, and Karma can speed away anyone. So I'm going to be interested to see where Sentinel decides to use his first ultimate.
Yeah, both of these junglers actually opting for more of a kind of power farm sort of style. There hasn't been a lot of action on either side of the lane, even though we did mention that Licorice was pushing in top lane just a little bit, and there were a couple of trades going down on the bottom side of the map. Both of these junglers seem content to kind of just farm up to their first item power spike. At the same time, Kha'Zix goes back and finishes his Tiamat. He's got a little bit of that extra jungle clear speed. Once they wind up getting to their own level 6s, we'll have to see where the first move is made.
I am overall interested to see what happens bottom lane as well. The Malzahar is one of those picks that gets really annoying once he hits 6. That flash ultimate is always a huge concern, not just in terms of where you use it on your own lane, but the roams that come with it, especially against the assassin picks that eUnited has, where both Echo and Kha'Zix can be very slippery once they get their ultimates unlocked, but they also, once they're pinned down, they really don't have those defensive tools that they're so needed to survive team fights.
Exactly, especially once they use those tools to get into a fight to try to blow somebody up, and when they're the ones getting blown up, like Fox taking a bit of trade damage here against Hatrix in the mid lane, there's not a lot of ways out once you've already kind of hit the go in button. And the same is to be said when you have the Ash pickup as well. So if you're going to have double suppression for the 2 potential assassination threats, you have to be a little bit concerned about when and where you're actually going in with those fights, which we haven't really seen any of them yet. Just actually the biggest action we've seen so far has been this little cheeky saying hello from Gilius to Zentai.
Yeah, the cheeky, oh, I see you on your Raptors, and you see me. We'll ping each other out, and mid lanes we'll play accordingly.
There was a little bit of rush play from Gilius, potentially trying to set something up. The parallel convergence didn't connect, so of course with no real big gank threat coming down. But interestingly enough, there isn't necessarily a lot, well, I guess there is. There's an Echo stun if you're able to actually land the parallel convergence, and there is, of course, the Kenning Slicing Maelstrom in a team fight that can really lock down or stop that Malzahar ultimate coming out from the bottom lane. You have ways to free up your assassins, it's just a little bit more difficult.
Well, the big one, of course, as well, is Kennen. There's a lot of mages that aren't happy to get TP flanks off. Kennen is one of them. Once he gets on your backline, drops that ultimate and starts stunning people up, that's really when you get to see the assassins start running wild, because there's all this AoE damage they're taking, they're getting low, they're stunned up, they can't quite get off their spells and they need to survive, and then that's when you start getting the resets.
The resets, we'll have to see. That'd be pretty exciting. One of the things I'm actually also very excited to see now is, we mentioned the beginning of the game, was the fact that Freeze is kind of a redemption story for him. He's basically knows he's starting over and it's a clean slate for him, but he's going up against Deathly in the bottom lane, who this is legitimately his clean slate. This is one of the more organized challenger teams he's been on. I believe he substituted for a team last split, may have played a game or 2 for Enix, but he came out of the scouting grounds. There was a documentary that came out about him from Team Infernal just earlier today. Very focused. They've hyped this guy up to be one of the better challenger AD carries. Now he's going against one of the, well, almost world experienced AD carries on the flip side from Europe.
Right, and I think Freeze has always been a bit of an interesting case to me. There was a period of time between Season 4 and Season 5 when we were looking at what AD carries we potentially wanted to import for our team, and we obviously settled on Piglet. But Freeze was someone who was very high up in those conversations, and he always impressed us, but there was just a certain lack of explosive take over the game power that you really want when you get an import slot. And I think this is his first chance to prove that he is worth that spot, and he looked pretty good on Renegades back in the day when he was playing in the NALCS. He was probably the best member on that team, I think you would say.
Yeah, he definitely also had a prowess on some of the more carry-centric champions. He's always had that pocket pick
the
of Draven. Yeah, so you really can't talk about Freeze without talking about his Draven. But on the more utility carry picks, where he's really about landing key skill shots, landing those ultimates, he's always been a little bit more lackluster. Although landing some key skill shots, maybe what Fox is trying to do, but he wants to go in and has to wind up popping the ultimate right there just to get himself out of a bad spot. That's
exactly what I was talking about, though, where I said I want to see where Vi uses her first ultimate. There she goes and uses it, and Echo just presses his and disjoints from it, and nothing happens. It's very hard as we see Freeze open up on the bot lane of eUnited, getting a flash out of Deathly.
The double tethers, that's just the power of the double suppression coming out from that bottom lane, but the turnaround on the Sheep, the heal winds up being used by Deathly, and now in comes Gilliatt, the flash and a jump forward. Looks like they tried to turn on to Freeze, but he's gonna flash out himself, and despite both ultimates being burned, so far no one's gone down.
A lot of action all over the map, but ultimately no one's gonna die. Syndra coming around behind with Sentinel, hoping to maybe get a dive off here as the minion wave gets pushed in.
Ooh, and they wind up using that blast plant to just shoot themselves over the wall. There is a control ward in there, but there are 4 members strong. A teleport's being channeled from the top lane, but Malzahar's already got the silence on. Gilliatt's gonna get not stunned up under tower, but Sentinel's gonna fall first. Blood goes over to Fox. The Kennen teleport is in, and the slicing Maelstrom is slicing through everybody. Quas with the follow-up teleport, trying to sustain, trying to get someone else down the back line. Can't quite get Licorice, and it's gonna be 3 kills for eUnited.
Looked like such a good play for a Tempo Storm, getting them pinned under the turret and TPing in, but the problem was when the Vi went in, she missed all her CC. I believe the Syndra missed her stun as well, so ultimately no targets are locked down. The Kennen TP finishes completing. He gets in there and is able to start CCing them under the turret. And then what ends up happening is Tempo Storm gets split up where their bot lane's not able to get over to the side of the turret where Quas is surviving through all that. So if there's any chance for Ashe or Malzahar to make it over, maybe Quas is able to get a kill. And you know, Swain's one of those champions where he's always living on the edge between living or dying. And sometimes you just don't die and you just keep killing everybody, and sometimes you just go down like it happened here.
Well, both of the ultimates being used from Tempo Storm here looked like it was going extremely well, and then even though they got away from both of these ultimates, the tower dive being set up, the ability to get away from Gilliatt. Yes, the summoner spells were burned here from their bottom lane, which kind of prevented them from later on getting behind that tower, but like you mentioned, once we see this dive going on, when the CC does not land, the teleport completing just kind of finishes it.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you really need to get the first kill quick, because the longer someone lives, the more abilities they're able to get out. The fact that I don't believe they CC'd anybody here is pretty devastating. He just drops the ult right away and jumps out from the stun, and then once Sentinel goes down, they're able to turn onto the rest of Tempo Storm, isolated away from the bot lane. And once the Syndra goes down, Quas is left in this 1v3, and you see if there's just any more damage that could have come in from his team there, he probably starts cleaning everybody up.
Yeah, both Licorice and Deathly were dropped extremely low, but although Tempo Storm may have lost a little bit of tempo with that tower dive, they're picking it right back up and going for a Mountain Drake.
Tempo Storm losing tempo?
There's going to be a lot of those, trust me.
Oh, God, please no. But yeah, it was good to see them pick up the Dragon. And as bad as we were making that sound, it still ultimately was a 2 for 3, so it could have been like a blowout play for them. It just ends up being a little... not quite what was expected.
Exactly. It's one of those plays where if it's executed with the utmost finesse, it could be complete devastation. But eUnited also, since there was not a lot of CC, unlike we're seeing with this Malzahar and Ashe combination again, definitely taking a lot of damage. Has to throw out the Chains of Corruption himself just to turn that around, as the Voidlings will wind up chasing Barrett's back.
You see just how important that first pick Malzahar has been so far. Most of the action has been centered around him, as well as the target bans at the support position, making sure that there's not much that's able to match him. Karma has done, you know, a respectable job so far with the shield being able to keep definitely up, but it's still ultimately very scary because at any point he could get popped.
Exactly. And he has the Karma, of course, to try to keep him alive, but it's going to be very, very difficult if those CCs are being chained down. And on top of that, if Vi is in the area like she is currently, you have a third CC where AD carry with very, very low mobility is not going to be happy.
Nope. I mean, you're probably looking at the Varus as the scariest player on eUnited. Everyone else has their escapes, their defensive options. Varus is like, please don't kill me.
And please just leave me alone. Go for the double assassins that we have. As Fox taking a little bit of trade damage against Hattrick in the mid lane. He's already picked up pieces for his Hextech Proto Belt early on, so of course going for that potential burst coming out from the Echo. 2-0-1 after that team fight. He was able to survive and not wind up going down in that one whatsoever. Across the Rift, though, his opponent has picked up some early magic penetration in the form of Sorcerer Shoes and looks to be building towards that Morellonomicon. Just a couple of pieces in the inventory, though. It's a little scatterbrained considering they hadn't really gotten that gold from those kills bot lane.
Right. The thing I'm most interested to see, though, is the fact that the Kennen is, in fact, going for the attack speed on hit build. He has picked up the Wit's End early, which is really nice against the double mage-based solo laners, which is going to help him sustain through the team fights. But this is, you know, the kind of build people have been doing a decent amount, and it's not the same Kennen build that we're used to talking about in competitive play, where I was talking earlier about, oh, Kennen's great for these flanks, it CCs people, you usually have a Zhonya's, you go untargetable, you become this really, really threatening flank champion. But with this build, you actually want to play more backline, more next to your AD carry, and be another target that you're going to focus down as he actually gets jumped and sniped out. The chain CC is crazy on the side of Tempo Storm as they pick up a free kill on Licorice.
So remember when we mentioned the CC chain from the bot lane potential? That was it executed in action almost flawlessly. And as you said, wanting that Kennen to kind of be a target, well, he's got a big one on his head there as Gilius kind of joins up after his Kennen has died. And now with the rotation from Tempo Storm, looking at this top lane tower, potentially trying to take the first of the game.
Right, I talked about the fact that what makes Malzahar really scary is once he starts getting out of the lane, showing up in places you don't expect him to be.
Surprise!
Yep, there he is, and the Vi ult into the Ashe ult, into the Malzahar ult. Did you want to play this game, Tom?
Nah. Looking at that Malzahar? No. Looking at that CC chain? No, not so ever.
You're not playing?
No, I'm not. Tempo Storm, they're not messing around either. They've been able to take down a first tower blood into their own, getting that gold potentially just all onto Freeze as he was left alone just in the vicinity to get that bonus 500 gold.
Yeah, I really do like the rotation up to the top side there. You can keep in your standard lanes. They made a couple plays down, trying to pick the Varus off. None of them have worked so far. The Karma was doing a pretty good job keeping him alive, so change things up, flip over to the top side, grab that turret while you can, and I mean, there you see the power of the Mountain Drake helping out as well, the fact that they did have that 10% bonus true damage to objectives.
Yeah, in the meantime, you have Quas, who's on a very comfortable champion for himself, just fine to sit down here and push out some waves, farm under tower in a 1v2 situation, but it does look like that Kha'Zix is in the vicinity, so we may potentially see a die, but Tempo Storm sniffs it out and forces Gilius back.
Yeah, I mean, Tempo Storm looking like they're playing with more tempo, Tom. They're able to get the dragon off the reset of the first fight. They get their first rotation up to the top side, take top turret, rotate back down to cover the Swain. They look like they're pretty on top of their macro play.
I feel like there's some sort of tempo and dragon joke from Hearthstone that I'm just completely missing because I don't play enough, but...
Yeah, we'll let that one slide. I'm all right not hitting that one.
All right, if you insist. However, unfortunately, Syndra was not a fan of hitting that Scatter the League either, but just showing her dominance over Fox in the mid lane.
I mean, this really is a matchup where normally you think of Syndra as being this crazy lane bully who wants to destroy her opponents, get massive CS leads, and just start instigating people. It doesn't always play out that way against the Assassins. We see her Ghost forced out here with the pressure from Kha'Zix on this turret.
Yeah, just the threat of both of them going in there forces it out, and there you see once again the usage of the ultimate from Echo, just able to disjoint the ultimate coming out from Syndra, so no damage was taken through that dive.
Yeah, trying to scare him off the turret, hopefully to get it, but it forces the TP out of Quas. It's pretty good overall, the fact that you only had to commit an ultimate for that. And when they have the double TP that they do in the mid and top lane, anytime that you lose the teleport on your top lane or on the side of Tempo Storm, it's extra bad because you have to worry about who exactly you have to match up against. eUnited can put basically anyone, and he can't follow.
Yep, and that's the power of running that double teleport composition from their sides. Even though they wound up getting the kill onto Licorice on the top side and took his tower down, he could potentially swap into the bottom side. They could send dual lanes into the mid lane, just play the wave clear game for absolutely forever. Or they could do what they're doing right now, which seems to be very comfortable, just extending this lane phase. They've lost the tower for themselves, but they're content to sit back and farm. Almost a 20 CS advantage in the mid lane, 17 CS advantage in their other solo lane. Even their AD carry on the bottom side is a few CS ahead. But it looks like the Tempo Storm doesn't want to let this slow down. They know Fox has no ultimate, and he gets CC'd and shut down.
Yeah, that's what happens. You see that turret health bar start getting low. You get a little bit greedy. You don't quite respect the fact that Syndra is shown back up in lane. You think, I'll throw my W out. This is enough protection for me. And then, oops, there's a Vi there as well. Flash queuing into your face.
He's got the Sheen, but he hasn't got the completed Lich Bane, so not going to be able to have that dash and powerful auto attack to just shut it down. As arrow goes a little bit wide, it looked like the Tempo Storm is potentially setting up for a dive here. Multiple members moving in towards the mid lane. They want to try to just get pressure on that mid lane tower. Now that they know the mid lane is gone.
This is something I like a lot about Tempo Storm's comp. Usually when you're playing Vi or Malzahar, you have to throw yourself in there first, and it's very easy to get targeted as well. But when you combo with an utility AD carry, you can just throw out their ultimate and see if it hits, and then follow up only if it does. You don't have to commit quite as much as often. It tends to happen when you're playing Vi. You get these really crazy over-initiates. It feels like you can come flying in from 3,000 range away. You actually have to kind of pull that back often. But here, when you're following up on an Ashe arrow, you basically have that control already done for you. You don't need to have extra control. The Ashe arrow didn't hit. All right, I'm not going.
And the best part about that is they commit just one Ashe ultimate. We're going to the Essence Reaver build. We'll have a shorter cooldown. Actually, Lictor is taking a lot of trade damage from Quas. Didn't expect the Swain coming out of the brush to just blow him up like that.
And I have to say, I'm not liking the way this Kennen pick has looked too much. The fact that they used it as the counter pick to the Swain. Sure, he has a small CS lead, 20 CS. I shouldn't say small. That's a pretty good CS lead, but it's not enough for what that champion's going to do in team fights. Like, Kennen has to get so many auto attacks down to match what Quas is going to be able to do on Swain, assuming he just flashes into the middle of your team, drops his abilities and Zanya's. I feel like a Kennen's going to have to do a lot more to match that, and just a 20 CS lead, not even having taken the top turret yet, is not quite what they were hoping for with the counter pick.
Well, that's also what you brought up in the early stages of this game, where aside from eUnited, we're going to potentially be looking for, let's get some lane dominance established, let's play for maybe a couple of objectives, and then go for that 1-3-1 kind of split push potential. Play around the double teleports. They know that while Kennen might not be as effective in team fights, he's still a heck of a split push threat, especially just in a 1v1 duel.
Right, and I mean, like we said, the 1-3-1 does enjoy being ahead, but it is important to know how to close the game out against it, which is something that sometimes you see teams struggle with, and Tempo Storm being a new team might have that problem, where just being down that extra global against a team comp that never wants to group up does make it hard to end the game. And I think it's the kind of thing where if Tempo Storm had a much larger lead, I'd be more confident because then they can just force around Baron. But the fact that it is such a close game, and we haven't seen their macro get tested too much yet, but they have looked fine on in the early game. It's a little scary, though we see Syndra getting collapsed on.
Yeah, and this is what you talked about before. The Syndra really can't match up against the Echo in the split push. When you factor the Kha'Zix in like that, that's a dead mid laner.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really scary part about the Syndra. You put both AD carries mid, and Echo is way happier to have the extended lanes, the extra flank angles available than the Syndra, who just kind of wants to have people in front of it and shoot stuns and Qs out.
Smaller kind of width of the mid lane and just the elongated chase scenario coming out from Fox's Echo is just a superior situation for him to be in when you're getting into these side lane split pushes. But Tempo Storm, they know that Kha'Zix has gone away here, and so maybe Fox getting a little bit too hypey for that low HP tower. Again, the Nethergrass comes out, as does the Assault and Battery, and Sentinel goes on a killing spree.
You see just how annoying it is to play Echo against the Malzahar, and a lot of the Assassins play out that way as Foss opens up onto Licorice, hoping to hit him, but the W misses, going to be able to get away.
And in the meantime, while everything is going on the top and bottom side, eUnited's mid lane, they rotated the duo in there, and they're finally able to take down that low HP mid tower.
So this is basically, I think, what we're going to see for the next couple 10 minutes of the game, where eUnited is going to keep splitting up and hopefully picking people off. But they have to be careful that once they do get someone, they don't return a kill, because then they lose all advantage, like what just happened. And now Tempo Storm's actually the one grabbing a turret.
That's very true. And Sentinel and Sheep, them both in the bottom lane, going to be able to pick that one up for themselves. So the reaction from Tempo Storm from what eUnited's composition kind of wants to do, actually, not even going to have time to talk about that. His Kha'Zix has dropped extremely, extremely low. Just 2 quick ultimates there, almost taking out his entire health bar.
Yeah, the Merc Tread's saving him. Really, really scary. You usually see people skip that TM out right away and maybe go for the Hex Drinker versus Syndra, but she hasn't been snowballing too crazy. She's a little controlled right now. Don't need the Hex Drinker as bad as you usually do. But if you're a solo queue jungler, you're against the Syndra, and they're going off a little bit, get that Hex Drinker. It's going to save your life.
He's got one for himself right now, and it is going to be helping keep him alive ever so slightly more. But going back to the point about, you mentioned the macro play, the 1-3-1 that eUnited's composition can potentially pull off if Tempo Storm's going to be able to respond to it. Their position in the game, now they've increased it just a little bit. It's about 1,000 gold, so they don't have the largest lead. What they do have on their side is a plethora of experience. 4 out of their 5 members have played in either the European or the North American LCS. Sentinel was on P1 for a little bit before Inori came in. And then, of course, they had Sheep as well, who, although he hasn't played a game since week 7 in spring 2015, it still has that experience to deal with those macro-based strategies. Hatrix himself, we haven't seen him much in the LCS. They play professionally in Turkey, so they do have the experience, but can these guys come together and react properly? Well,
the scary thing is that a lot of their ability to handle this will come down to Hatrix. The fact that he will be in the Syndra in the long lane in a situation he doesn't really want to be in. This is not ideally the setup for Syndra, and being, you know, the most novice member of his team being in such a stressful situation may end up hurting them.
Yeah, so a lot's going to have to rely on how Tempo Storm reacts. And like you said, more importantly, where Hatrix is going to be in these fights. But if they're able to force things like this, using the Enchanted Crystal Arrows from Freeze, chaining that CC again. 1, 2, 3. Gilius goes down, but a teleport has been channeled by Licorice. Actually, that was Fox's teleport coming in here. Licorice's teleport.
The double TP trick, Tom. They got you. Worked on Piglet, worked on Tom.
No, I feel like Piglet. Oh, no. But so they're actually able to continuously stop any of those pushes. And if one of those members of that kind of 1-3-1 goes down, that just makes the other ones crumble because they're less vulnerable.
And I mean, it really is important to force out a TP in a situation like that when you're against the 1-3-1, as we see Quas once again trading heavily against Licorice, easily going in his favor, though he does have the Executioner's Calling now to reduce the healing that Quas takes, but it still seems like Quas just straight up out-damages him.
Well, there's the point where you can reduce his healing, but Quas is still going for Azonia's Hourglass with the Secret's Arm Guard in his inventory, so he has some armor. He's going to stack up against Kennen's natural AD boost coming out from the Mark of the Storm, and then he also has just a lot of HP from almost fully stacked Rada bases.
Yep, and just to touch on quickly what I was talking about, when you're up against the double TP. What makes them really annoying to play against is the fact that you can try and collapse on that split pusher in the side lane, but you always have the threat of him getting joined by his other solo laner with the TP. So if that goes in the bot lane and you're pushing and he's pushing up and you want to punish that, well, guess what? The Kennen can show up as well. So it ends up being a 2 for 2. And just getting out those kind of TPs in situations that are already favorable for you, so Tempo Storm gets a kill and forces out that TP. It lets you be freer on the map. You don't always need to be worrying about the fact that instantly 2 or an extra person can join in whatever fight you choose to pick.
With this double TP pressure, well, single TP as Licorice's is just coming up, but Fox's his is still going to be on cooldown for a little bit. We'll have to see if eUnited is going to be able to make any real pressure movements on the map. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow goes out yet again. It lands on Zeyzal. Are they going to wind up pushing forward? The Flash, Nethergrass, and Sentinel goes on a rampage. They're just lining them up and knocking them down one by one.
It's hilarious. You see the arrow hit and everyone's off screen. You're like, are they going to get there in time? The answer is yes, as they open up onto Licorice as well. He's going to get ulted. He's going to go down. Oh!
Barely survives.
Jeez, the wit's end, just enough MR to survive as eUnited is trying to chase this down, though. I'm not sure they really want to pick this fight here.
Well, now that they know the Assault and Battery is used on Licorice, there's absolutely 0 of those chain ultimates left available for the side of Tempo Storm. But going for the Essence Reaver build on Ashe, that Enchanted Crystal Arrow is going to have an extremely short cooldown time and definitely get stunned up by the Scatter of the Weak from Syndra, forced to flash away. And now Tempo Storm, they're starting to use that momentum. They were waiting to kind of capitalize on these chain CC crowd effects. They weren't able to get a ton of towers since they took a couple already, but they're getting their 3rd dragon now.
Quas is roamed down from the top side, saving his TP to try and ensure that they're able to pick up this dragon. Nice try by Fox trying to force them out. Looks like they're going to be able to do so.
Yeah, they're actually able to force them out, but Sentinel finishes that Cloud Drake, but now it's going to be trying to be cleanup duty for eUnited. They've already taken down Sheep, but now Quas stuck between a team in a hard place here. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow comes in, the opposing Redemption comes out to heal up eUnited, and Quas is going to get stunned up and knocked down. There's an Executioner's calling, and of course the Varus with the healing debuff on his E to just shut him down.
Right, but the fight's not over yet. Fox is left pushing, and he gets jumped on by Sentinel, able to walk away with the speed buff from his passive.
And it looks like eUnited are going to try to at least establish some vision, if not even go for this Baron buff. There's no teleport available because Quas is dead for at least 20-something more seconds, and Sheep is just going to be respawning now. If Fox can zone them out from this could potentially be a Baron, but Fox is going to get caught out, and Hatrix picks himself up the kill. eUnited has to peel back.
It's very difficult to do a Baron at just 26 minutes into the game when you have no tanks in your composition. No one has any armor really to tank it up, and if the enemy team has anyone around to just poke stuff at you, like Syndra Qs, like Ashe Volley, then it's very difficult to do unless you just plan on turning off and killing them. That misstep opens up the mid turret to drop for Tempo Storm.
It's also very difficult to do if your mid laner gets blown up while you're trying to zone away, but this all started off with a play that Tempo Storm was making after forcing them out of mid lane.
Right, and basically they try and back off the dragon, leaving Sentinel to finish it, but the collapse from eUnited is able to get them down low enough that they're able to eventually drop onto Sheep and pick up the kill, and then turn on to Quas, who's still left hanging around the exhaust, slowing him down long enough. The Karma roots. So much CC, so much anti-healing.
But look how much time it takes to kill Quas. Remember, after this, they turn on to Baron, they wind up losing a fight. If Quas was a squishier top laner, if he was somebody that was a more carry-centric top like a Fiora or something that would get blown up a lot easier, all that time could have been used on the Baron, but because it took so long to kill him, Tempo Storm was able to just turn on eUnited.
And of course, that was basically them chasing him down and killing him. Can't wait to see what Quas can do in a real team fight situation. So far, the 2 times that we've seen him, one, he was behind his turret with, or United's turret with no support here. One of his team's already dead as they jump onto Deathly. He gets the chain CC treatment this time, though the Karma Shield is big enough to help speed him away. He might be able to get out of here.
For now, looks like Sentinel is going to wind up getting stunned up by the Karma Tether, but Hatrix is going to wind up picking up a kill on Deathly. They want the original stun on Karma, but the AD carry is the one who pays the price for that.
Going to be interesting to see what Tempo Storm can get off this. I think it's a little hard for them to force around the dragon, Baron as well, though Sentinel does have a Dead Man's Plate already. That extra armor is very important when trying to take the Baron buff because he has a lot of physical damage.
Yeah, and actually Fox, once it putting on the Parallel Convergence, immediately has to ulti himself back out of that. He's taking a lot of damage, and the Voidlings are still pursuing after him. It's going to be interesting to see. Tempo Storm has taken a slow but steady approach. Their gold lead early on was still only about 1,000, and now it's only about 2,000, so cresting almost to the 30-minute mark in this game. It's not necessarily the largest lead, but it does seem like after all of these fights, with all that pick potential, they are slowly but surely taking down every single Adder Tower, taking every single dragon, and look to be content with playing this extremely slow.
Right, I do think that Tempo Storm does not need to worry about how late the game goes. Ashe generally, I think, outscales Varus in teamfight situations. And while Echo and Kha'Zix can start insta-giving people, especially given that there's only one real tanky type champion on Tempo Storm's side, they do have a very nice front line that they can peel back behind. Quas is kind of one of those pseudo tanks who, the longer he stays alive, the more he's able to tank, whereas if you target him and blow him up really quickly, it's not like a Maokai with a ton of resist and damage reduction.
And one of the things that, because of all of this pick potential and all the chain CC coming out from Tempo Storm, it's forced members from eUnited, such as Gilius and such as Deathly, to go itemize for that QSS, which is delaying some of their more powerful item spikes later on. You have to get this item that gives you some magic resist, but mainly just the cleanse of all that CC, instead of going for your third or second big damage item after getting the Zeal item.
Right, and we see eUnited trying to set up some kind of play around the bot side. Maybe Licorice was thinking of blast coning over to join him with Fox to kill Quas. But we see eUnited falling back to just Baron control and split pushing. It does look like they're going to try to make that play on the Quas now, though.
Yeah, Quas down here by himself. Thinks he might have a 1v1 against Fox, but in comes the slicing Maelstrom from Ken, and Quas does have the Zhonya's Hourglass, though. Now the mini wave is here. The Ravenous Flock's actually going to help heal him up a little bit more. But with Kennen coming in, he does have the Executioner's calling. The healing denial will be there, and Licorice will shut down Quas.
And that's what we talk about. He didn't even have to TP in that time. The Kennen just came in with a nice flank and killed him. And Tempo Storm wasn't able to do anything around the top side of the map because that double TP, I mean, even if they forced, guess what? Both those people who were down the bot side making a play can come in and stop that Baron. And now we see eUnited able to take the bot inner turret.
Yeah, Tempo Storm tried a little bit of a late reaction. They're using the Ashes and Enchanted Crystal Arrow, trying to get a catch onto the mid lane, but because that missed, it was opened up the space for eUnited to know everybody else from Tempo Storm is in the mid lane. We're able to get a bottom lane tower of our own. They've tied up the towers 3 apiece.
It's a very interesting game to watch so far, Tom. We see that you have two very distinct styles of team fight. Tempo Storm wants to get a target, blow them up instantly, make the team fight a 4v5. eUnited, they don't want team fight at all. They just want to keep splitting up, making these map plays and using the double TP to cover any kind of attempt that Tempo Storm makes to force something.
It's kind of two different definitions of pick potential. One is with chain CC, and one is with 2 assassins picking you off because you're out of position. But this is the one that people may be more familiar with, as the lockdown goes on Zeyzal, but he's able to just flash over the wall and stays alive.
Yeah, one is a kind of a divide and conquer strategy. The other one is see a man, kill a man.
Yeah, see hero, kill hero. The EU influence that Fox and Gilius have brought over.
Yeah. Channeling the old M5.
The inner M5 strategy, but it looks like the Baron is going to be the target and the focus from Tempo Storm. They've chunked out the Karma. They thought this was enough. Teleport comes in. Gilius not able to get the steal down. Sentinel gets the smite secure, and now really great never move from Quas in the backline. He will pay with his life for this one, but he might have set his team up to win this ensuing fight. Sentinel goes in, and they're chunking down Licorice. No Zhonya's for the attack speed Kennen build as he goes down. Definitely has to flash away, and Zeyzal's stuck between the enemy team as Freeze picks up another kill.
Ends up being a 3-for-1 plus the Baron, while Fox pushes down bot lane. He is able to pick up the bot inhib turret, but with the Baron empowered recall, I don't know if he'll be able to get this inhib. Look like he's going to get it, but will he pay with his life?
Well, Hatrix has no ultimate available. He's going to wind up trying to chase after Fox. The flash doesn't burn the Time Winders out to try to get the slowdown, and Hatrix looks like he might just be on wave clear duty at this point, just giving chase to Fox so he can't get back in time for the rest of Tempo Storm to push down that mid lane and try to equalize the inhibitors.
Yep, and it looks like they are going to be able to get up to that inhibitor, take that one down. Be interesting to see what they're able to get with the rest of this Baron buff now that the map is a little bit imbalanced with the bot inhibitor down for Tempo Storm and the mid inhibitor down for eUnited.
And with the Baron off of the map now, that means the top side of the map loses a little bit of priority. There's going to be another dragon that's spawning. But let's take a look again at this Baron play that Tempo Storm just really quickly pulled the trigger on.
Right, and this is really risky. Basically was a 50-50 Baron smite. They are able to secure it, and if you're struggling to deal with that split push, I don't hate forcing like this, though it is very, very risky. Ultimately, they do get the Baron buff, which is critical to them because they are able to get that empowered recall off and stop the in-hit push. If they lose that Baron, you're looking at Fox potentially ending the game by himself. They are able to get a number of cleanup kills, which is nice, though. And ultimately, I think the game is still in a pretty good spot for them, but eUnited is able to pick up their first dragon as well.
And it's going to be an Ocean Drake, which is going to be not necessarily as useful to
not
the
too
Mountain
useful
or
32 minutes
Colonel.
in.
Yeah, normally you want those stacking up towards the beginning stages of the game, but that will make the next dragon on the map Elder Dragon, and it does mean that if they are able to take that one, if the game goes that long, they will be seeing more benefit than not having any Drakes at all.
That's true. Let's see how Tempo Storm sets up with this Baron split push. Looks like they're putting Quas on the top side to get a wave going, while the other 4 members are going to push down bot lane and let the super creeps from mid deal with it on their own.
And Quas himself has already been a force to be reckoned with in these 1v1 scenarios. He hasn't really gotten a lot of fair fights in this game. A lot of times they have to send at least 2 people over to deal with him, but if that's the case, then the 4 members strong from the side of Tempo Storm, they're taking, you know what, we've been talking about eUnited wanting to do this 1-3-1 for forever. Maybe they got tired of hearing it, and they're going to do a 1-4 of their own.
Yeah, I think Tempo Storm's looking forward to finally being able to put some map pressure back onto eUnited after getting that Baron Force off.
Well, the Baron buff has given them now that gold lead that they haven't really been able to secure. This Baron buff, these towers going down systematically one after another, has stretched that lead from what was just 2,000 cresting the 30-minute mark. 4 minutes later, they're about, 6,500 gold ahead.
Yeah, it looks like Quas is struggling to get the push on the Kennen on the top side. He's kind of just stuck with the wave right in the middle. Not quite getting the pressure down that you want with the 4-1. Really just a 4, one dude hanging out.
Pretty much, but I mean, you also have the super minions on your side, so even calling it like a 4-1 in this kind of scenario is not necessarily the best. It's like a 4 half-1. But they have the pressure in that mid lane, which is going to be continuously meaning that somebody eventually from eUnited has to go deal with it. With Quas pushing up, both of those lanes now pushed up. They took the tower in the bottom lane. They've moved through the mid lane. They're able to kind of set up these picks right now, and they have the CC to do it because we've seen it plenty of times already. I
do like Tempo Storm deciding to join up with Quas, who is having trouble getting anything done on his own. And here you see they're able to jump on the pick attempt onto Quas. They're going to try and turn this fight.
Fox actually having to burn his QSS and try to go back down onto Quas, but now Fox is stuck between a rock and a hard place as he winds up going down after the silence comes out from the Malzahar. The Assault and Battery goes down, and now Gilius has fallen as Freeze takes that kill and goes on a killing spree. United thought they were the ones pulling the trigger, but Tempo Storm was just waiting for it.
Yeah, I mean, you see the QSS not doing too much versus Vive from Kha'Zix there. Got that more from Malzahar, but that was a really smart play by Tempo Storm. Like I was saying, they saw that Quas was struggling to get the push going on their own, so they rotate up into the top side jungle to help join him. And for some reason, eUnited didn't really have a read on that and still tried to force on the Quas.
Now, Quas is just like, you guys have been trying to gank me when I've been split pushing and just wanting these 1v1s. Have a taste of your medicine.
I got my team backing me up this time.
And he and his team look like they may be going for the end here with 2 members down on eUnited's side. They've already taken down one Nexus tower and the other one already at about half HP. There's still at least double-digit death timers on the side from both Fox and Gilius, and the Nexus now being exposed. Just that one fight, and that's it. Tempo Storm pushed down, and they take game number 1.
I mean, it's a pretty interesting series, or game, like we were saying, the fact that they had 2 very, very distinct styles. Ultimately, Tempo Storms comes out on top.
Yeah, so Tempo Storm, it was really about, tempo. We've made jokes about that already, but the word itself is just being able to kind of take control of the pace of the game. And even though they weren't necessarily pushing onto the opponent's side of the map, they weren't making these extremely big, flashy kind of plays. These small incremental advantages that didn't really wind up culminating in anything until that Baron buff was taken, just really pushed them over the edge. From 4 or 5 minutes after that Baron buff take, the game was over.
I really do think it was important, though, those plays that they were making in the early game, because it is really hard to stack up versus that 1-3-1 comp. We saw what it was able to do in the mid game when the map starts opening up a little bit more. And if they hadn't made those good plays over the course of the game, then they're actually not up 1 to 2K. They're potentially down 1 to 2K, and then it starts snowballing worse and worse as these people, as United keeps getting these pickoffs in the side lanes.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, those early game plays eventually did culminate in them being able to take a Baron play, which you actually have an impressive replay of, because they were really, really quick at pulling the trigger on this decision after kind of hemming and hawing for most of the game.
Right, we see the Kha'Zix going for the smite steal, very, very close, doesn't quite get it, and he goes down instantly for that mistake. The rest of the team joining in, and you see there that Fox actually took his ult out after he TP'd in, so he gets a cleanup kill and pieces back out to keep split pushing down the bot lane, and then he kind of left his team alone in the 3v5, and people start getting cleaned up after that.
Yeah, and I'm actually a little bit impressed with the fact that it looked like eUnited was the one making a lot of the early game movements. It looked like they were the ones, they were consistently on the opponent's side of the map. They were the ones making the split push plays. We consistently talked about the rotational movement with the double teleports, and Tempo Storm looked like they were picking off a 1 kill here, 1 kill there, but they slowly kind of culminated it into that advantage. But the way that they were able to just make that decision to do Baron all of a sudden, and then rotate towards the top of the map and make the decision to counter gank that one fight where they tried to jump on Quas, as soon as they made decisions, it worked out great for them.
Right, and I do think, as much as it's nice to say, like, oh, they're making these really decisive calls, that's great, but I think they do need to be a little cleaner in it. You can't always get that Baron, and if they miss that one, it's probably game over in a sense, because Fox just dips back out to the bot side of the map, pushes down that inhib, and it was super important that Syndra was able to get off that Baron-empowered recall. Whereas if she's not able to do that, she probably can't get a recall off, and it's just, oh, there's the inhib, and now there's more super creeps, and now there's Baron buff on them, and potentially losing the game.
Yeah, so eUnited, like you mentioned, they had the opportunity there. The Baron play could have gone completely wrong, but now they have they have to kind of like separate themselves for that. It's going to be game number 2. Of course, they play best of 2s, so it could potentially be a tying in the series, which would put them at 1-1 against Tempo Storm. Both these teams seem like they know how to wind up playing the game, but there's definitely going to be some potential picks or changes that they had to make on the side of EUnited.
Right, and the thing I'm looking at really is the Malzahar. I think that enabled a lot of the plays that they were making in the early game. Obviously, they had to change CC with the Ashe and the Syndra and the Vi, but there's too many picks at those positions to really limit the ability of the amount of lockdown that they have. There's always going to be a mid laner with CC. There's the 380 carries that all have CC. I think what you have to look at after that, of course, is, okay, that Malzahar, the flash ult was way too reliable and set up too many plays.
And they might also just have to kind of go back to the drawing board. They had the counter pick potential. When Quas locked in the Swain, it looked like they didn't necessarily know how to react with it and went for something they may have had planned for that specific split push strategy. The Kennen himself, you mentioned, he was known beforehand. If he went for the AP build, he was very good at jumping into a fight off of a teleport. The split push build with the attack speed works out against certain kinds of matchup. The Swain didn't necessarily seem to be the matchup he could handle all by himself.
Right. I mean, he had so much time alone, the top side versus Quas, and still wasn't able to take that turret till late into the game. And I think that's the thing that they can do now if they're on the blue side, is target ban that Swain right away as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they choose to go with their bans in the first half of the draft, because I think you might see that Malzahar ban, you might see a Swain ban, and a couple other things.
Yeah, so we'll actually have to see what they wind up going for in the second kind of draft phase. If you're on the side of Tempo Storm, though, you got to be extremely happy. Like you mentioned, there's still a lot of potential out there. If you were really working on, hey, we're able to really kind of like make these calls, land these chain CC kind of abilities, there's a lot of utility that comes out of the AD carry role. Freeze looked like he transferred kind of flawlessly. We heard from him before in the kind of interview that we did with him, where he was saying, hey, my play isn't as clean as it was before. I'm going to be trying to work on that one. One of the things that when he was on H2K, that he was kind of like, not necessarily like blamed for, but one of the things he was a little bit not less studied on was those utility AD carry picks, specifically those Ashe arrows. He was not missing a lot of them there.
Right, and I do think that when you're on these utility AD carries, it is kind of a nice segue back into the competitive scene. You're not counted on to be this hyper carry, stomp your lane, do all this crazy stuff. It's throw out this arrow, try and hit it. Hopefully it does, and then we'll follow up and do the rest from there. And you just have to stay kind of safe in the back line and get as much damage out as you can.
Well, guys, we're headed for a quick break, but when we come back, it's Game 2 between Tempo Storm and eUnited. You're watching the North American Challenger Series. Ilya's going to get stunned up under tower, but Sentinel's going to fall first. Blood goes over to Fox. The Kennen teleport is in, and the slicing Maelstrom is slicing through everybody. Quas with the follow-up teleport, trying to sustain, trying to get someone else down the backline. Can't quite get Licorice.
He actually gets jumped and sniped out. The chain CC is crazy on the side of Tempo Storm as they pick up a free kill on Licorice.
Using the Enchanted Crystal Arrows from Freeze, chaining that CC again. 1, 2, 3. Gilius goes down, but a team in a hard place here. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow comes in. The Redemption, the opposing Redemption comes out to heal up eUnited, and Quas is going to get stunned up. Sentinel goes in, and they're chunking down Licorice. No Zanyas for the attack speed. Kennen build as he goes down. Definitely has to flash away, and Zazel's stuck between the enemy team. Got to go back down onto Quas, but now Fox is stuck between a rock and a hard place as he winds up going down after the silence comes out from the Malzahar. The Assault Battery goes down, and now Gilius has fallen as Freeze takes that kill and goes on a killing spree.